All right, good morning. Got a couple people still walking in, but we'll go ahead and get started. We'll keep the train running on schedule. So yeah, good morning. Welcome to the Linda Hall Library. I'm Eric Ward, Vice President for Programs and Education, and thank you for being here today when it's such a wonderful day outside weather-wise. I want to go over a couple of upcoming programs before we begin. First of all, though, today, as you probably know, since you're here, today is the last day of our Life Beyond Earth exhibition. So if you haven't seen it yet or you want to see it one more time, now's your chance. You've got 4 more hours, about 3 hours after this program. And for those of you who are sticking around for the film screening of E.T., the extraterrestrial, we're going to be doing that down in our auditorium downstairs across from History of Science. Also, we have our Science to Art exhibit up in our East Gallery. That'll be up for a couple more weeks, so be sure to check that out. Our new Acquisitions 2025 exhibition opens October 24th, and that'll feature some rare books and other exciting things from the collection that we acquired in 2024. I know there's a Galileo in there too, so that opens October 24th. October 25th, this is a Saturday, we are hosting Shakespeare. It's a Heart of America Shakespeare Festival performance on the lawn here at the Linda Hall Library. It'll be south of our courtyard. It'll include scenes featuring witches, ghosts, and magic from Shakespeare plays, including Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, and more. Kids may wear costumes and receive candy at the entrance. And if adults want to wear costumes, you'll probably get candy too. So again, that's Saturday, October 25th. It'll be from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. We have information on our website, but if you want to purchase, that's a ticketed event. So you can go to kcshakes.org to purchase your tickets. And I know they're going fast. So again, that's kcshakes.org. And if you attend that and have trouble sleeping afterwards, we've got you covered. October 28th will be a lecture on the science of nightmares. That'll be a daytime program at 3 p.m. here at the library. And also our next big evening program will be November 6th. Author Samuel Arbesman will be here to talk about his latest book, The Magic of Code, How Digital Language Created and Connects Our World. And Rainy Day Books will be here selling copies of this book. All right, now for the main event, I would like to introduce our distinguished guest speaker. Dr. Eric Dorfman is President and CEO of the Linda Hall Library. He is the author of several popular books on New Zealand natural history and climate change, as well as scholarly papers on museum education, public programming, Egyptology, and the ecology of wetland birds. His most recent book, The Future of Natural History Museums, is currently being translated into Chinese and Japanese. He earned a doctorate at the University of Sydney on scale-dependent habitat use of water birds in eastern and central Australia. To find out more about Dr. Dorfman's books and other publications, and to read his blog, visit his website at ericdorfman.com. And I know he's written at least a couple of blog post on Octopus and aliens. So again, that's ericdorfman.com. So please welcome Dr. Dorfman to the stage.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate it. It is fantastic to be here. We really, we love being open on Saturdays, and we'll continue to do that and increase that cadence. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming, acknowledge that we have trustees here in our midst. Thank you for being here with us. Also, Eric mentioned that this is the last day for Life Beyond Earth, and that's how this whole talk started. That was the genesis of this. So let's make sure I'm doing this. Yes. So today we're going to talk a little bit about octopus ecology, their cool anatomy and physiology, and also the scientific theory that the um, intelligence of octopus comes from outer space, which is a pretty strange thing to talk about. And to give you a little bit of context, it's so strange and so interesting that we originally were going to put it um, into the exhibition. And we thinking about it. We were going to put it in with some of the other alien kind of astrobiology stuff. If you know the exhibition, you know where I'm talking about. And then we thought, well, what if people believe it, right? So we're kind of going, it's easier to debunk a bad theory in a talk than it would be in an exhibition when you're not there. So we thought, oh, let's save it for a public lecture and leave the octopus in the ocean. Why I'm interested in this, I have had a couple of times in my life the great good fortune to keep octopi. And they are, let me tell you, if you've had a cat or a dog, they are not that far off. They knew me as an individual. They certainly came to me, associating me with food, which my cat does. So there you go. And didn't really like other people. So there was a definite level of intelligence and connection that we had. So I love octopi. I really do. They're just magical creatures, and really lots and lots of people do. Right, going back, this amphora is 3,500 years old, and it's Minoan. It's probably for olive oil. And I mean, just the beauty and care that was taken to create that is, to me, really bespeaks a real connection to octopi. And you see this motif a lot in ancient Greece. Um, and of course, we love all sorts of, we love octopi in science fiction and all kinds of stuff. Now you see the letters here. You'll get a chance to guess at the end of this where they're from, or if you know them, if you know these creatures, you get a chance to know if you're right about this. So we'll come back to this. But the thing that's amazing is that they are connected right through pop culture. Right? We think of octopi, and we think of aliens, and in many ways they're sort of synonymous. And in fact, there's even an International Octopus Day, and I only discovered that when I was starting to do the research for this talk, October 8th. So actually, this is the first Saturday after World Octopus Day, and of course, October 8th, what could be more appropriate than the 8th of a month. So, and this was started by an international group of octopus fans. It's not UN recognized, but I'm sure that's coming. Anyway, we look at octopi and we just know they're different, right? We're like, yeah, that's a pretty alien being. And if you've seen My Octopus Teacher or any of those other documentaries about them, they are super cool and just odd. And so let's, open the hood a little bit on it. Why? Well, we know they're intelligent, but they're really alien, right? Their physiology, everything. There's nothing like them on the earth, right? You go to a cat, right? A cat or a dog, they have four limbs like we do. Their eyes look at you like we look back at them. There's a certain connection of both being mammals. Where this is a mollusk, its closest relatives are snails, right? So how could this thing be so, how could it develop this way? So that's what I want to explore a little bit here. So this is the evolutionary tree of mollusks in general, right? So we're at the Precambrian. This is really, really deep in our past. We're talking like 530 million years ago is this line right here. This fanning out of different species is called the Cambrian explosion. That's going to come back. I will come back to that in later slides. But the point here, this circle, this black circle, is where cephalopods here diverged from gastropods, and it was a very long time ago, right? So 530 million years ago, cephalopods broke away from other mollusks. So they've been around a very, very long time in our oceans. Now, I'm going to show you some slides, and you've probably seen ones like this, right? I know when I was at early museums, when I was a kid, and I saw these recreations of early oceans, the top predators in those very, very early oceans were cephalopods. So here we've got, just to orient you a little bit, Precambrian, then Paleozoic, Mesozoic. Now, Mesozoic is the age of the dinosaurs, right? So you probably know this already. Then there was the big asteroid that hit the Earth, and we went from the age of dinosaurs to the age of mammals here, the Cenozoic, and now we've got the present. So you've got all these different groups of mollusks all starting from this one progenitor. So here it is. Here's my favorite kid picture of the ancient oceans. This is the Ordovician. So at this point, there were no creatures on land, right? This is pre-insects, pre-vascular plants. Everything was happening in the water. And you've got Camarasaurus, 470 million years ago, this large shelled cephalopod. When I say large, I'm going to show you a photo, but first I want to show you the other main group of cephalopods in these early oceans, and I'm sure much more famous. You've seen the ammonites, right? So the ammonites are more kind of nautilus in shape. They're coiled, hugely diverse. At one point, this was the most diverse type of creature on the planet, and also the most abundant. So when you go to fossil shops, you see dozens and dozens of these things for sale, going from really tiny to gigantic, incredibly expensive specimens. Here's how big they got. Here you go. This is Camarasaurus. Look at this. Each one of these boxes is about a meter. Enormous, but look at this beast. Now, of course, these ammonites got really, really huge in the age of the dinosaurs. So there's mosasaurs swimming around going to eat you, and they're as big as whales with sharp teeth. You want to be big and have really thick shells, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many fossils, because of how thick their shells were, so that they could avoid being snapped up by these giant aquatic reptiles. So pretty cool. Now, let's talk about the diversity of different kinds of cephalopods, right? So we're moving away from the point where cephalopods have diverged from other mollusks, and now we're talking about diversity within. So here you've got squid, cuttlefish, octopus, and nautilus. And these are the main different groups of cephalopods. This paper that I'm going to tell you about, this extraterrestrial paper, really only concerns octopus, right? Squid, they're not so intelligent. They're kind of, the nautilus, not, okay, they're great, but they're not like super powered like the octopus. So there's one thing I'm going to come back to that I want you to notice here. You've got orange dots and blue dots, and here's some orange and blue dots. Blue dots here are deep water, pelagic. They're open ocean or the bottom of the ocean species. Orange dots are coastal. And when we get back to other kinds of theories about why octopi are intelligent, aside from the outer space theory, I want you to remember that some of these species are coastal and some of them are not. So that's what we're going to come back to. So now let's explore octopus coolness. So this guy here wants to be in this barrel. There's a plexiglass wall and a really thin little gap there. And those gaps are originally, this is a YouTube clip, by the way, they are piled up against the wall. And he can't get in there unless he can figure out that there is a gap under the plexiglass wall and that by moving these blocks away, he can slip under it to get to the barrel that he wants to be in. And so this whole video is about him exploring the whole wall and then moving around and finally he does it. It's really cool. And he gets into, that's the other one of the cool things about him. Even though he looks really big and robust, he can squish all that water out of his body and get into these really tiny, cool little spaces. And you may have seen videos of like octopus escaping from a bucket and getting through a tiny little hole in the side of a boat and then to freedom. So that's great, right? And that's kind of something we know. Something you may not know is that they don't necessarily have to figure it out themselves. This is a scientific paper that demonstrates that octopi can learn just from watching their compatriots solve a problem. So they can watch, interpret what the thing does, and then first time get it right. So that's also pretty amazing in terms of processing ability. And of course, then there's tool use. Very famously, the coconut octopus. He carries around the coconut shells in the tropics, obviously, where coconut shells are abundant. And this is his traveling compartment that he'll be around. And this is important because they are really vulnerable to fish, right? They don't have any, like parrotfish especially, love an octopus. And they don't have any hard parts, so here's them having a suit of armor. Pretty cool. Now, how can they do all this, right? So let's talk a little bit about the physiology. It's a myth that octopuses have 9 brains, right? That's something that we like to hear, and unfortunately, some scientists still call it arm brains. Not so good because they don't have brains. They have 8 nerve cords that come along, run along each arm, and a central brain. So it's still it's still amazing, but it's not quite the same thing as having 9 independent brains that work with each other. And so it's important when we start thinking about science to think about the sources that we get the information from. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute anyway. But what is cool is that, at least in air quotes, their skin can interact independently of their brain. So you know, of course, what amazing camouflage these organisms have. And the reason why is because this is now, I'm just going to talk about the color, and I'll talk about skin texture on the next slide. These, they have 3 different kinds of cells, color cells, that all interact together, right? So they have chromatophores, which are responsible for the dark and light pigments. They have iridophores, which are reflective, so they can be iridescent. And then finally, leucophores, they're responsible for the white pigments, right? So we have dark pigments here, iridescent and white, and they're all interacting together. And they can detect the color of their background independently of the brain. So the octopus doesn't have to go, oh, look, I'm in a black and white area, and so I'm gonna consciously do it. It's all automated like we breathe. But it's not just the colors, it's the texture as well. So these are papilla, they're called, and there are muscle contractions that are also being controlled by these nerve cords. And you can see that this octopus has some of these papilla. It seems like it's hiding amongst coral. But somehow these things detect whether or not what kind, what the texture, the level of complexity of their background, and they can mimic it automatically. But it all kicks in if they're frightened or they're wanting to hide to catch prey. Now, something they do appear to do consciously is the ink, right? So they actually have two different kinds of ink. You will have seen, I'm sure, films of them letting loose ink. The one that we mostly see is what biologists call a smoke screen. I guess everyone calls it a smoke screen. That's this picture, right? So they're just creating a cloud of distracting ink to confuse the predator. But they can also do this thing called a pseudomorph, which is a more clumped kind of ink. It has proteins in it that the smokescreen doesn't, and it just floats there like a prey item. So the predator, hopefully for the octopus, will go for that lump of ink, and the octopus can get away. So really amazing different kinds of biology coming together to create this organism that really doesn't live very long. That's the other really interesting thing about octopi. So this is Ghost, was a beloved 4-year-old octopus, which is pretty old for a giant Pacific octopus. This is at the California Aquarium. And when Ghost died, she actually was in the news. This is actually a picture from NBC. She laid eggs, which were sterile because there was no male to fertilize them. And this is at the end of her life, and then she passed away. So it was really a very sad moment, but an expected one. In the wild, Pacific octopus can live up to 5 years. Most octopus that we see, only 1 to 2. So that's the thing. One incredible thing about octopi, they grow from a microscopic organism floating around in the plankton column to something that can weigh several kilos in just a year. So it's a pretty incredible. Why should they be able to do this? Well, the other thing about them is that this laying eggs once and then dying is called semiparous reproduction. Semiparity means you only do it once and then that's the end of you. And it happens to the males too, right? So the females, they starve themselves. They put all reproduction, all of their physiological, resources into creating these eggs, and that's the end of them. But the males also decline quickly after mating. So they are giving their both parents. It's not like just the females are going through this. It seems very strange to have this super intelligent organism that can do all this amazing stuff and then just pass away. And octopus biologists think that it's part of why they're opportunistic predators. It's part of their ecology. And like insects, right? We know that insects can become immune over several generations to like DDT, right? So because they're breeding so quickly, they have an opportunity to change their DNA in response to the changing environment. That's where this whole idea of them being coastal, remember I showed you those orange and blue dots, create a situation where lots of generations over a short period can respond to a highly diverse and changing environment. So that's why the current thinking anyway is why they live in such short lifespans. Let's just engage in a bit of fantasy for a moment. What if every octopus lived 50 years? would they develop some sort of culture? We know that they have the intelligence, they have the ability to manipulate tools. Wouldn't it be cool if they did something like that? Well, there is a little bit of evidence that shows maybe they would do something like this, right? So welcome to Atlantis. It is in Australia. There are, say, between 10 and 20 of octopi all living together in a sort of community, right? And they interact, they share tools, they share burrows or fight with each other. There's a whole lot of complex social interaction that's really never been seen anywhere else, except that in this one Octopus tetricus, it's called. This is the Australian octopus, and they do all they. There's a whole social dynamic that doesn't appear to be evident in any other species of octopus. There's oops. Let's go back. Go on. So put it all together, and this is what caused us, funnily enough, Australian scientists to say, okay, we have this amazing suite of really weird things about octopus. Where did it come from? So they developed this theory here that the cause of the Cambrian explosion, right? So that's where I showed you this fanning out from the original mollusk to all these different kinds of mollusks in that about 500 million years ago, was caused by viruses that came on meteors that hit the Earth about 500 million years ago. Okay, why? So let's think about this a little bit. But in the meantime, right, it was published in Progresses in Biophysics and Molecular Biology. This is a very reputable journal. And it was reviewed, it was 30 authors. Look at this, 30 authors from around the world. And it was peer reviewed like any good scientific paper. And so the press went, woohoo, we have aliens amongst us. And it was a really big deal, really big deal in 2018, all over the press going, we are, we have, they build pyramids underwater. And here, this one's in German. It really got all over the world. And it is a super exciting story. And if it were true, wow, how incredible would that be? So let's look at exactly what this paper said. Around 500 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion saw a sudden burst of new animal forms. That is true. The fossil record definitely shows that. This may have been sparked not only by Earth's conditions, but also genetic material delivered from comets. And that's where, okay, let's keep going. Viruses could have driven rapid DNA changes, speeding evolution. Now, in theory, viruses, or at least the DNA from viruses, could survive in the vacuum of space. So it is not actually impossible that this could be the case. And octopus are they're used as an example of this sudden surge in complexity that we saw in the evolutionary period, resulting in all this cool stuff that I just showed you. And it relates to this idea of panspermia, the idea that life is not restricted to planet Earth, but is actually out there and spreading through things like comets across the universe. So let's talk about panspermia a little bit more, how it would have worked in this scenario. So here you go. Here's the Earth. Sorry, I didn't have, this is a modern Earth. You'll have to forgive me. But a comet carrying a virus hits the planet. And here's a nice little proto-cephalopod creature hanging around in the Ordovician seas, or even earlier. And they get infected by this virus. And all of a sudden, they go through this rapid evolution, carrying the viruses of that were originally from and then they go through this huge diversification. And because it's called panspermia, this thing is happening all over the universe all the time, and how we get crazy creatures that we saw in my first slide. So scientists went and said, okay, let's really put this through some rigorous scientific testing. And the first, you would expect, if this was the case, that you could go to meteors now and you could find some evidence of some viruses or DNA or something on modern meteors. Seems pretty obvious. We don't. No one has ever found any kind of biological or even pseudo-biological material on a meteor. So they're hard to gather any evidence that way. Okay, the next thing, you would expect that octopuses would have had insufficient time to develop all these really amazing characteristics just through the course of evolution. And this is where, of course, that DNA, the rapid turnover of octopus, they only live a year. There is a lot of time for octopus they change their DNA quickly. Here's a paper. I expect everyone to read this. You'll be tested on it at the end. They did, right? So they've had 100 modern octopus have been around for 150 million years. So this is a long time and a really plenty of runway for them to have evolved the traits we see. So here, this is from actually the same paper. Those orange and blue dots are now orange and blue squares. Same idea, shallow coastal, deep pelagic here, and here is the period in which they're evolving. So the important point to mention here, these yellow, you remember I showed you the octopus with the yellow nerve coming down, same colors here. And these are the nervous systems. Here's the octopus with its nervous systems going down its arms. Here are different kinds of cephalopods with different nerve structures. This is where getting back to those differences in habitat really seem to be related to the difference in intelligence levels of even different species of octopus. The coastal ones seem to be the intelligent ones. The deeper ones seem to be a little bit more like their ancestral species. So there's another thing. Octopus have 33,000 genes, protein coding genes. This is one of the other things that came, this huge, within an organism, huge genetic diversity. Is that the case? Well, humans only have 20,000. Bananas have 36,000. And I would say that bananas are not as cool as octopus. Even though I like bananas, and nobody's suggesting that they come from outer space. So the authors of this paper had suggested that because they have 33,000 genes, that must have been that they were given a boost by these meteors containing alien viruses. But really, when you look across the species, actual genetic number doesn't mean a whole lot. It's how they're expressed that's really important. So now I'm going to tell you a slightly more complicated story, but I'm going to do it with an analogy. Why they are so bananas have so many genes because they just replicate themselves, right? So they just replicate their genome. Plants are very different creatures from animals, and they can do that, and they still stay a banana. Octopus are doing something completely different, and this is super cool. They can rewrite their genetic code from generation to generation. And they do that through what is called RNA editing. So I'll use an example here here's the chef and here's the sous chef. And the chef is working from a cookbook. And every now and then, so he's the proteins, he's the genes, the sous chef is the RNA. And he will come in working away, and the sous chef is going to rewrite something, right? He's going to take salt and make it sugar, or change from baking to stewing. And the chef doesn't know and keeps creating out of the cookbook with the slight changes. So RNA editing is exactly like that. It codes for the sous chef, codes for certain enzymes that change the way the DNA is expressed. So you've got the DNA, which is the basic cookbook, but how it comes out into proteins, which code for body tissues and nerves and eyes and feet and everything, is about the expression of the gene. And this guy over here is changing the words in the cookbook. And octopus, so humans do that too. All animals do that to a certain degree. But what's cool about octopus is they do it all the time. This is just what they're doing consistently. So you can get very rapid evolution in a very short time. So that is a great explanation why they have so many genes, 33,000 genes compared to our 20,000. So it's not of extraterrestrial origin, or doesn't have to be, right? And in science, if something doesn't have to be, it's a lot safer to assume that it's not. Okay, so what about intelligence, right? We know that octopi are incredibly intelligent compared to even their close relatives. Well, what it seems to be is just a matter of degree. So here is the sea hare. How many people know this creature? It's the California sea hare. If you're on coastal California, it's a gigantic slug. Californians tend to love this thing. It's very docile. You can pick it up out of a tide pool. It's over a foot long. It's kind of eggplant colored. And they have these really cute little faces. That's why they're called sea hares, because they look a little bit like rabbits. They have a tiny little, sorry. They have a tiny little shell here. So you would not expect these things to be very intelligent at all. But if you poke them a little bit and nothing happens, and you keep poking them a little bit, say with the end of a pencil, I'm not suggesting you do this. We're all about animal welfare here. They can remember when something's harmless, right? They'll recoil if it's something new, but if something doesn't hurt them, they'll just hang out. They're totally fine. Well, that is at a very rudimentary level, a kind of processing their environment that octopus are really skilled at doing. So, okay, sad but true, there is no evidence for extraterrestrial DNA traveling through space, at least what we've got. The gene number and RNA editing are unusual, but really not that different from any other species. Intelligence is definitely at the far end of a spectrum, but it's still on a spectrum. And they've had plenty of time to evolve their cool traits. So really all those things. Oh, and finally, there are no fossil gaps. This is hugely important. No fossil gaps requiring the insertion of alien DNA. So really, this has been like it was a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, not so true. So why did they believe it? And well, I mean, obviously the media just loved it, right? And so we all believed it, or we for the moment we found it intriguing, let's say, because it was everywhere. But there is this idea of confirmation bias. And now I don't want to throw those poor scientists, all 30 of them, under the bus, but why would you believe something maybe a little bit outlandish? Well, first of all, the idea of cognitive bias, and scientists are human, And we all have some sort of cognitive bias. So all evidence is out here. Here are our beliefs. And what we believe tends to concentrate in that overlap between what's out there and what we feel we already know. And that kind of may help understand why these scientists wrote the paper to begin with. And then the other thing is, we are evolved as creatures to recognize patterns. And, it may have helped us back when we were very early humans, recognize when there were predators, and now that's the way our brains are wired. We like patterns. And sometimes we see patterns that aren't there. And that is why we have the scientific method. That is the foundation of science, to be able to separate what we think we see from the thing that really exists. And so here it is. We make an observation. This is a potted scientific method. Many of you, I'm sure, already know this. We make an observation. We form a question. That question relates to a hypothesis. We do some experiments, hopefully really cleverly, and we can analyze those, and the statistical results will tell us what conclusion to form. And then here, there's a feedback loop. So if the conclusion is we were correct, we go back and we keep asking more questions, because that's what we do. We're scientists. If the conclusion says we're not, oh, wow, we have to reframe our hypothesis and go, okay, we learned a lesson there. How does the world work a little bit differently from the way we thought it was? So the goal of science is to give us objectivity. We can believe if there's no evidence, right? And we don't have a time machine, we can't go back. It's inherently untestable. There's inferential things we can say, like we can look at other meteors, we can do other things like that. Otherwise, it's just taking it on basic faith. We think, oh yeah, that's great, we'll just go there. So I might be maybe, casting aspersions at these scientists, but I'm definitely not casting aspersions at octopi themselves, right? They're still completely amazing, and they've got a lot to teach us, right? First of all, there are other kinds of intelligences besides our own. And that is, maybe starts to think of how we view our relationship to the rest of the world. The other thing that's really interesting is that you could conclude from studying octopus that morphology, body morphology, and the kind of intelligence you evolve are interrelated, right? So if you have 8 arms and they all have nerve cords, you're going to have a different kind of experience of the world versus something where it's all concentrated up on top. And so that really maybe is a bit of a lesson in humility. We are very, of course we are, and we should be anthrocentric, right? The world evolves around our human experience because that's our personal experience. And that's great, but it does teach us that there's maybe more out there. And finally, you don't have to go to space to find the extraordinary. We live on an amazing planet filled with incredible organisms, and the intricacy of ecology is infinite. So I just want to wrap up with a couple more slides about some stories and some philosophy that's happening around octopi in the world. This is brand new, right? This is from August, the time that I started writing this talk. This was current stuff. 18-month marine heat wave, probably related to climate change, made ideal conditions for an octopus bloom, a 1 in 75-year octopus bloom. And there was a cascade, right? So like maybe you've seen rabbit eruptions or rat eruptions. Think of the Pied Piper. Well, this was an octopus eruption. And they eat crabs, and they cleaned the crabs out, right? So, and the crabs were on the south coast of England, something that there was a major fishing industry for them. They have a very short lifespan, as we talked about. And so it looks like they can regenerate much, much faster than the crabs. There's going to be a whole lot of octopi um, instead of a whole lot of crabs. And the problem there is that the fishing industry said, well, great, we love octopus. We'll clean them all out. And so now the whole system seems to be kind of upended and kind of destroyed along with the fishing industry. Uh, Staying with the UK for a moment, the UK has also recognized that cephalopods are intelligent or sentient. And I should say octopus specifically are sentient in 2021. So does that give us any ethical implications about whether we should eat them? We don't eat chimpanzees. So what is the question? How should we relate to, and I'm not saying to stop eating calamari. I'm saying that when these things happen, we should think about the broader implications. And finally, really just thinking about aliens as storytelling devices. We love this interaction, this interplay between the weirdness of the cephalopods and how we tell stories of the bigger world. And of course, if you saw District 9 in 2009, had a very strong social message using aliens as a euphemism, if you like. So now, before we get into questions, if you have them, it's time to guess what these things are. So I've taken the letters off, but we'll start with, does anybody know what A is? Do you know what yes? Yes, absolutely. Yes, Doctor Who, first introduced in 2006. Thank you. Give this man a gold star. Okay, how about the next one? B, this one here. This should be pretty easy for people. Yes, that's right. That's right. Okay, now we're down to the one right below it. If you're watching, I think it's Netflix. If you're watching Netflix at the moment. What's that? No, 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 no. Good guess. Okay, Alien Earths. Alien Earth. It's this creature, so there's the alien. It's the only thing around that's not afraid of the alien. It kind of attacks it. Pretty cool. Okay, next one. Yes. Well, I know it from Baldur's Gate, but yes, very, very good. Mind Flare. Absolutely. Illithid, mind flare, kind of same thing. Here's the hardest one of the whole lot. Any guesses? Any random guesses? No, good guess. Good guess. Oh, it's not in Alien, not in the movies, but also good guess. You have to be, and that's the right era. That's the right era, but it's not that. Also great guess, because I know there was a cephalopod in that. Um, Anybody guess the family of movies that it's from? Godzilla. Yes, someone said yes. I heard Godzilla out there. This is Gazora, 1970. I know, hard one. Okay. Um, anybody older than 20 might get the upper right hand. Yes, very good, very good. And then finally, this one's open slather. Arrival, yes. In fact, we showed that not that long ago as part of this Saturday series. So great job. You've all done fantastically. And now I will open it up to if anybody has any questions. Are you doing? Eric's going to go around with the microphone because we do have people online who need to hear.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we want to capture the audio. Let me start here and then I'll come back to you. Excuse me. Just hold the mic close to your mouth.
In all your research, did anyone ask the question, why 8 arms versus 6, like in dimensions, or 4 that everyone on land has?
Or in fact, 10, which is squids, they're called decapods, not octopods like octopus. Um, there will be people asking that question, but that I cannot answer that question. I don't know what sometimes it is a quirk of just genetic drift, which means that in all of these mutations that cause this divergence, it just lost the. Actually, yes, I can tell you one thing that is very different. The 10 squid arms are, two of them are mating arms. They're very specific. They're the ones that come out with the kind of leaf-shaped end that you often see. Those carry the spermatophores, the eggs, basically, the packets of eggs. So actually, they are similar to previous octopi, but beyond that, why specifically 8? I can't tell you. Yeah, sorry.
All right, we have a question over here
Yeah.
by the camera.
So in the research that's been done on RNA rearrangement in octopus, have they been able to sort of see in the genetic clock how far back that trait goes? Is it shared among other cephalopods, or is it something that seems to have emerged since the divergence of octopus?
So the RNA editing is very common amongst all species. Octopus seem to have more of a more ability to do that than even its close relatives. It's something like that you wouldn't get that from fossil evidence. So it's how my understanding is that it would have the extreme ability to do RNA editing would have happened about the same time as octopus split off from other cephalopods, which is part of why it could evolve so dramatically so quickly. Yeah. So
Eric, up front here.
okay.
How many species of octopi are there?
Oh wow. Very good question. Hundreds, but I don't exactly know the exact number. Yeah, but there are lots and lots of them. Yeah.
You mentioned that the Pacific octopus is larger and longer lived. Do we know what causes them to be larger and longer lived? Are those two traits connected, or is there some other cause evolutionarily behind that?
Right. They are connected. That absolutely. So it's kind of the reverse of dogs, right? Chihuahuas live longer than Great Danes, but it's related to the cold water too, right? So they're in shallow environments in much colder water, and that is slower metabolism. And so they're that why they are bigger tends also you tend to get bigger animals in colder environments. So really they fit into a sort of an ecological set of ideas around why animals are different sized. And then the longer lived seems to just come along with that. Yeah.
Right about midway back in the room.
With a colony that's in Sydney of the octopus, do they tend to live longer on average as a group?
The group seems to live longer, but the individuals don't. So they're cycling through and coming back, and it's actually Perth on the west side. But there is some evidence that these congregations sort of they last for a while, and then they break up, and another one will start somewhere else. It's right now, there's only that. Atlantis was only the second one ever found. There was another one called Octopus a few years before that. So it's really not known at this point how prevalent that is, right? Is this just a few individuals going, let's do it? Or is this something that these congregations are kind of scattered all over the place? Yeah.
All right, got a question up here.
I was wondering about when you mentioned that, who decided or what group came to the conclusion that the octopus was a sentient being? And was it over a controversial thing where they were trying to farm them and group them and then like
Right.
a production facility to eat them?
Right. So interestingly, so I only know part of that story, and that was the UK government who said the federal government declared them sentient. So and I also know that there has been controversy over octopus farms. What I don't know is the connective tissue of those two statements, whether there was a UK lobby that caused this to happen. And my assertion is that it's almost certainly the case that there was a lobby to make this happen. But I don't know the details of that.
I think that specific declaration had to do with lab experimentation.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
All right, back of the room here.
What traits do you think they gained over time versus what they were just born with?
When you say like what an individual gains over the course of its life?
Yeah, I mean, like, what traits do you think they just got after they were born versus kind of what they passed on or gained as generations passed?
I see. So the if I'm understanding your question, octopus are so short-lived that they're unlikely to grow, and they'll take on some of the traits of the environment that they grow up in, right? So, maybe if there's heavy metals in the water, they'll incorporate those into their tissues. But in terms of it's more, almost all of it is passing on from one generation to another. So when they lay their eggs, they are laying eggs of slightly altered individuals from what they are themselves. So is that answering your question? Yeah, good. Good.
Right.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank you for your very intriguing, nevertheless concise, but very intriguing lecture. Raises more questions than answers,
Of course.
especially to me. I'll be Googling all afternoon to learn more. So I would like a few questions of the one I will select. Given the short lifespan, has anybody studied the DNA telomeres in order
Right.
to
I don't, that I know of, no one has looked at telomeres in octopi, but certainly they could. It'd be fascinating.
Okay, and then would you comment on the shape of the, let's call it head,
Okay.
and gives, maybe your next lecture should be octopus, human, and artificial intelligence, because we can argue, is this intelligence or very advanced interactive behavior?
Sure.
Because intelligence usually is associated with evolutionary, with reallocation of the eyes from the side of the head towards the front.
So let me start with that, because I think it's related
I have many
to
questions, but we can take.
Sure. So first of all, the eyes in the front, you're thinking about terrestrial organisms, but in octopi, you've got to throw all the cards up into the air, right? They're not aligned like we are, and in fact, they can see a very wide right. So the structure of their head is, and if when you're talking about the head, you're specifically talking about the eyes and the placement, it's adapted to their environment. And remember that while I said that they don't have 9 brains, they have 1, our anatomy is related to the kind of environment where we all of our thinking power is concentrated into a very small space, whereas they are so different from us that they have skin that reacts without conscious thought. They have 9 nerve cords, and those nerve cords to some degree are acting independently of the brain. So having forward-facing eyes isn't necessarily an advantage, or even a central brain is not, or a highly centralized brain is not necessarily an advantage when you have these 8 appendages that are gathering information all the time in real time and processing that information within the arm. It doesn't have to go back to the brain. So it's a very different model to our, you can't use human anatomy or even mammal anatomy generally to assess what's going on in octopus. And the final thing with AI versus human versus octopus, first of all, AI is purely performative, right? It is not sentient at all. And it just ask it. It'll tell you it's not sentient. It is from my, right, my perspective is that it's a super, super fancy typewriter, right? It's not, nothing it says is, it's just coding of zeros and ones. Octopus intelligence is so different from ours that it's really hard to process it related to what human intelligence is. But one thing that's all similar between the 3 kinds of processing the environment is we're taking in information, we're doing something with it, and then something happens. You know, it's hard when we talk about octopus intelligence, it is about novelty. It's about creating, in a way, it's like generative AI, I'm afraid to say, but it's taking something that wasn't there before and making something new out of it. And that's really the base. Humans do that all the time. We're going to do that 100 times today. Octopus can do that too. And with something like generative AI, the question is it really making something new, or is it just a way of complexly rearranging what it finds on the internet? And that's a fundamental difference, and why nobody's accusing octopi of plagiarism like they are. Yeah. So, sure.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dorfman.
All right. Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you again for attending today's program. Be sure to check out the exhibition. This is your last day, and we'll be starting the film E.T. down in our auditorium at 11:30 if you'd like to stick around for that. You got time to go out and grab some lunch and bring it back and watch the film. So thank you and have a great weekend.